Hello, welcome to Citizens Forum. It's Wednesday, July the 5th. My name is Jack Etkin. Our guest in the first segment is Todd Littman of Cities for Everyone. We're going to be talking about affordable housing. And Todd, I know you've been in the game a long time, so maybe you can tell us a bit of your background.
Right, so I'm a transportation and urban planning consultant. And so professionally, I spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to create cities where people can be healthy and successful and happy, which is a great challenge. It's the challenge of our age. A lot of my work is outside of Victoria. So my professional work, I work all over the world, but I'm very interested in applying a lot of this current research in Victoria or in our community. And so I've been working with a group called Cities for Everyone, which is looking at ways to ensure that our communities are inclusive, that people of all income classes and people with disabilities and all sorts of household types are able to find the housing and transportation options that they need in our community.
Okay, and once again, the goal is to make our cities, you said something, and happy. I remember the happy.
Well, I like to think of healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Yeah, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Sounds good.
And what is well, so you could say that's the new way to think about sustainability. Sustainability was always supposed to be about balancing economic, social, and environmental objectives. But for a long time, people thought, or people focused on environmental sustainability, and we tended to overlook economic and social sustainability. And so I think it's very important to bring back those additional issues and make sure that when we talk about sustainability, we're also recognizing we want to be inclusive and deal with issues like affordability, and we want healthy, and we want economic success. We want strong economies.
Okay, so when I look at Victoria over the last, as the place where I live, but I think you can probably say something similar for every city in Canada, things aren't going that way. They seem to be going in the opposite direction, I think, but.
Well, I will respectfully disagree.
Okay.
Victoria, from an economic perspective, is doing very well with high employment rates or low unemployment rates. We're seeing population growth and a lot of innovation. We're a center for all kinds of innovation and education. So I think from an economic perspective, we're doing very well. And we're starting to implement some very creative policies. Let me start off saying Victoria is very lucky that we never lost some of the attributes that make good cities. And those are things like having some walkable urban neighborhoods where you can get around without needing to own a car, and fairly good public transit for a city of our size. So we have good transit service and high transit ridership compared with peer cities. We have a fairly diverse economy. That's one of the good things. So in a lot of ways, I think our city is doing well. The biggest challenge that I think we face right now is on affordability. That is that we are so attractive and we are so successful, and people from all over Canada, all over the world want to live here, and so it's driving up housing prices.
Not only want to live here, but for a lot of people, they just want to invest here.
Well, yes.
Which skews everything, and we shouldn't allow it, I don't think, but there we are.
Yes, that is a challenge, and there are some interesting dynamics, and I think Vancouver was smart to put on a 15% non-resident.
And our city council actually voted not to ask the provincial government to do the same thing. I was very surprised at that.
Well, I'm a little surprised, but keep in mind that a lot of those problems, a lot of the this concern about foreign money, that's partly a symptom, not a cause of the problems. The problem, in my assessment, is that for the last half century, we've made it very difficult to build infill housing. So while the number of people who want to live in Victoria has grown significantly, more and more people want to live here. That's a very good thing. We haven't been building the basic housing that accommodates those people.
Yes,
So
that's the problem. We don't have enough housing for the people who live here.
well,
want
that's
to
right.
live here.
That's right. And that's the
Who
key.
do live here.
Right. So that's the key for infill housing.
Yes.
So if you want to, if cities had no value, if every place was equal, then you could find plenty of affordable housing 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers away. But if you want the benefits of a city, which are huge, there are very large benefits to being able to live in a walkable urban neighborhood. If you want those, then in order to accommodate more people, we need to allow more infill. We need to allow what's currently low density neighborhoods to become medium density neighborhoods. And that's the challenge that we face.
A lot of neighborhoods don't want that.
That's right. So our current zoning codes and development policies assume that whatever was right 50 years ago will be correct, will deliver the right mix of housing 50 years in the future. Our development policies are static, not dynamic. And so one of the principles that I think we need to understand and implement is the idea of dynamic, responsive development policies. That is, if the number of people who want to live in a neighborhood increases by, say, 50%, a responsive land market or a responsive development policy allows densities to increase by 50%. So all those people that want to live there would be able to live there. But our zoning codes currently don't allow that. And so a lot of what we're working on in Cities for Everyone, the organization that I'm working with, is to figure out ways to allow incremental increases in the number of housing units that can be built in the neighborhoods.
Now, I see what you're saying. I've walked around Victoria and Saanich a fair bit, and I see areas in those, in both Victoria and Saanich, where you could build, I think, thousands of units of really, really nice housing and real communities in some places, without going into neighborhoods at all. I mean, it's almost like low density, light industrial parking lots more than anything else.
Sure.
And I don't know why Victoria and Saanich don't open those. I mean, we've got a housing crisis, people say, right. And yet our two city governments seem to be standing in the way. And I contacted Saanich about one large area, and they said, yes, we have a 30-year plan for it. And I'm thinking, well, what about the last 30 years,
Right.
It's pathetic.
So, yeah, there are some opportunities for building housing in non-residential areas. And, to its credit, the city of Victoria now has almost 4,000, something like 4,000 units under various stages of development around the downtown.
It's amazing.
And that, I think, will start, once those start being online, so once those start being sold into the market, I think we will see some decline in the housing prices, and especially the condo prices in the downtown area, in that market. But a lot of people don't want to live in downtown.
Yes.
And they don't want to live in one of the more industrial areas. I think it does make sense to build housing in some of those areas. I think that's great, and I have nothing against high-rise. But for most working class or lower income people who are struggling to find housing, the best housing that we could create are what we call mid-rise, so 2 to 6 story wood frame townhouses.
Wood frame are so noisy.
Well, I
Beg to differ?
I would somewhat disagree.
Yeah. But anyways, good quality. That's
Sure, good quality. apartments and townhouses in the areas that have lower land prices, which are the residential neighborhoods. Now, there are some opportunities, typically on the arterial, so along busier roads. There are currently some projects that are going in, and those are great. But equally important, in my research, suggests that equally important is to find ways so that it becomes feasible for a developer, or let's say a property owner, who has a single-family house, to convert that into a duplex or a fourplex, or let's say 4 townhouses on what is currently land for just one house. And in a responsive, dynamic land market, that would be easy, which means it would be relatively cheap. As every time a government applies some sort of a restriction or a requirement on development, it adds costs that all add up.
And you had a chart that kind of shows that if you want to...
Sure. The types of housing that are most affordable, the types of new housing construction that are most affordable, wood frame apartments in neighborhoods that have with modest land prices, so not downtown, and that have unbundled parking. So the parking space is rented separately from the building space. And if you do that, you could have fairly affordable, under $1,000 a month new apartments.
Under $1,000 a month new apartments. These are car-free.
Under $1,000 a month. Or
okay,
you could have townhouses that are right around $1,000 a month, $1,000 to $1,200 for a new townhouse that's just delivered on the market.
Okay.
The problem is that most of those affordable housing types are not allowed to be built.
Right.
Most residential neighborhoods are restricted only to single-family housing, which is more expensive to build.
Right.
And those single-family houses almost all have either 1 or 2 parking spaces.
Right.
That's required by the zoning codes. And so even if you don't own a car, you're required to spend what turns out to be a large amount of money building parking spaces for cars for your neighbors.
It's a significant amount of difference.
It's a very large cost. It's ironic because...
So because we have to have the car, everything goes up.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People want those free parking spaces, and so we're not eliminating the cost. Somebody has to pay. There is no free parking except in the game of Monopoly. Every time you use a parking space without paying for it directly,
somebody is paying.
You're paying indirectly. You're paying as part of your taxes or part of your rent or part of the price of a hamburger at a restaurant that has all that free parking. And so, and it makes no sense.
So reducing the use of the car.
We're essentially saying that there's no law that mandates housing for people, but we do have laws that mandate generous numbers of parking spaces for cars, housing for cars. And those parking spaces, most people have never bought a parking space as a separate unit, and so they have no idea what these things cost.
Todd, I'm afraid we're out of time, but that is the perfect place to end because it's also the beginning of something we should really be looking at. Todd, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack.
And thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.
Welcome back to Citizens Forum. I'm Walt McGinnis. I'll be your host for this segment. And we have with us today Dr. Joel Whitehead from the Lakelands Acupuncture Clinic from Penticton, British Columbia. And Joel is a doctor of traditional Chinese herbal medicine. So we're going to be talking to Joel about what Chinese medicine or traditional Chinese medicine is doing for us. Welcome to the show, Joel.
Nice to meet you, Walter, or nice to see you again.
Yes, it's been a long time. Joel, I think it'd be good for the viewers to know generally what is the difference in the approach between traditional Chinese herbal medicine and the standard westernized medicine approach?
Well, I don't know if it's particularly Chinese herbal medicine or just Chinese medicine, but I think the thing is that in the West, the Cartesian view is that we're going to cure the body in spite of what ails it. And I think in natural medicine, not exclusive to Chinese medicine, we just trust the body to heal itself. In other words, what we have to do is guide the body to that place where it can heal itself.
So you don't use drugs and
No.
other things in that manner.
No, if you take something for pain, for instance, and you cover up the pain, or you just keep delineating the pain, the body never really gets over its pain. It just
Yeah.
gets used to higher grains of pain medication. So the best thing, of course, is to use that pain as a gauge for how good the body is getting, right? So
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So when you're looking at a patient, and we just talked about this earlier, the whole concept of deficiency and excess.
Yeah, yeah.
What is that about?
Those are the two big delineations in Chinese medical diagnosis, or two of them. Of course, we have yin and yang, and hot and cold, etc. So we have many things, but the first one is this person deficient or excess, or are they both, right? If a person is excess, which means that they have enough energy, but they're in pain, it just means that someplace the energy is blocked. It's not moving, and to relieve that blockage is going to ameliorate the symptoms. But what I'm seeing more and more, of course, is people coming in with serious issues related to being deficient. And oftentimes this goes way back, and it's much harder to clear because you actually have to build energy before you can remove those blockages. And
How would you go about doing that?
well, of course, the age-old way is with herbs and with acupuncture to some extent. Of course, a person is going to have more energy if they are unblocked as well, and the body is functioning more circuitously, I guess, but we also would go back, in my case, and try and find out why they have become weaker over time. One always thinks of diet and the way we've grown up, but there's actually more to it than that.
Yeah.
I think Walter, I use an allergy elimination technique.
Yeah.
And people think of allergy only in terms of, oh, this makes me sick, or this makes me break out, or this makes me sneeze, or so on. And they think of that as allergy. But allergy is really the process of the body throwing something out. And that process we really hate. In other words, if we have hay fever and the body is trying to block it or throw it out through the eyes or the nose or the bronchioles, etc., we don't like that process, right? But it could do the same thing to a nutrient like vitamin C or vitamin B. And in that case, as it throws it out, it wouldn't be so violent, we wouldn't be so sick, etc., but we wouldn't get the benefit of that either.
Right, and you could become deficient in that.
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, over time, if you're not absorbing, or if you're only absorbing a passive amount of something, then you're not getting the use of that. And of course, what happens if this goes on for a long time is that starts to cascade, and the person is not being nutrified. And even if you give them herbs, while they're taking the herbs, they may feel good, but they're not really building up as a result of the herbs, and they're really never separated from the need for the herbs. Right?
Yeah, like what role do you think stress would play in this, like general lifestyle stress that we're seeing in?
Well, it's important to realize that one of the ways we get allergies is the body's association with stress. In other words, if we are stressed, Nambuchabat herself, the person who developed the system that I use, says that if you came home one day and your parent was in a foul mood and it was dinner time and they castigated you rudely for a while and you were in shock, and then they said, sit down and eat your dinner. And I think that's a scenario that fits a lot of our childhood. Your body might say, oh, it must be the peas we're eating, or it must be the vitamin C in the peas that we're eating. And the body might relate that to that shock or that emotional displacement, and create an allergy to that to protect us. That's how.
Now, would that be also go into like the child said, I don't like carrots.
Right.
Could it have been because they were being forced to eat carrots, or is that different than an allergy?
Well, hard to say. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, for every scenario, it's hard to say
Yeah.
where the subconscious or this thing we call allergy, which is just another line of defense for the body,
Yeah.
kicks in, or where it's just a recalcitrant child who is trying to, say that, I have power too, right? So.
And the other thing is, like, say with the hay fever, which I have quite a bit in this time of year with the farmers all around where we live. Now, hay dust and everything, that's not a very nice thing. Like, shouldn't we have some reaction to something like that? Or when is it a natural reaction? When is it an allergy?
Well, you do and I don't. And of course, we might sneeze as, in the moment if
Yeah.
enough of this particulate came in. But if we started getting hay fever or if our body started girding and getting sick, then
Yeah.
it's created a second line of defense to protect you, probably because you were not strong when you were first exposed to it, maybe as a child. And so thereafter, the body just decided to always use this as
Yeah.
a protection. And what we try to do is sort of say, well, you're okay now. You're stronger, you're older,
Yeah.
your immunity's good. Let's just go back and tell the body or reorient the body to say that you don't need to make this reaction anymore.
Yeah.
And that's quite a miracle when that happens. It
Well,
can
it
happen.
really is, because I've had that therapy and it's been very successful for me. Now the thing is, something that's I always found curious is, you use the vials with the substance inside the glass vial,
Right.
and then you use the strength of the arm as a measurement of what how your body reacts to that substance. Now, how does that work? Can you explain it? Is it possible?
Well, I think so. I think at least I can give a rational explanation. Whether it is the explanation or not, I don't know. But the body will have strength. Okay, it's a little bit like you holding on to some groceries and somebody throwing you a baby. You drop the groceries immediately and you go for the baby. Well, it's the same thing. You were testing your strength and your strength is fine, and we put something into your auric field, usually using touch in this case, and the body says, oh no, we have to protect against this, and it diverts its attention, and therefore you lose your strength in the muscle merely from this attention being diverted to shielding against
Would
this
you
object.
think that substance has a frequency? Could
Well,
you look at it in that way?
Everything has a frequency. Everything has a spectrographic difference.
Yeah.
And that's the basis of homeopathy, if you know much about that. But everything has a different slice of spectrographic frequency, okay? And the body recognizes it even if it's a slight difference from one object to the next.
Yeah.
So yeah, the body is, that's one thing I was saying in the beginning, that we must trust the body to heal itself. Right? Always saying that we're smarter than the body usually ends up in disaster.
Yeah.
But if we trust the body to self-regulate,
Yeah.
the body will usually do the job.
Because in what I do, I test for electromagnetic radiation,
Right.
and it's man-made and very powerful forms of radiations. It isn't these minute, exquisitely low power. Now, is it possible that vial, your body is communicating with that vial through that glass and picking up that frequency? Could it be looked at like that?
Well, again, I think that even EMF or EMR, et cetera, has its own frequency. And it may be that microwave, a person may have an allergy to microwave where they may not have an allergy to EMR. I think because that frequency is slightly different,
Right.
Whether the mechanism is electrical or not, we have an auric field, we have an electrical body.
Yeah.
I show people all the time that if we're testing them and they cross their legs, their arm goes down because we're crossing our circuits, right?
Right.
And the circuit is not flowing the way it should. And that's just a test to see if,
Yeah. So I mean,
I just want to add something before I forget, Walter, is that since you've talked to me about EMR and microwaves, when people come in and they have a cell phone, I often test them for the cell phone. And one of the things that is different between the cell phones and the smartphones that we're using today is that I can take a smartphone after I've tested them, and then I can put it over them, put it down on the floor 4 feet away, and for some phones, even 8 feet away into the hallway of my clinic before their arm stops being weak. And so it exhibits how strong our auric field is and how much everybody reacts to microwaves, right? And I mean everybody. It's like everybody is allergic to that. There are a few things that everybody's allergic to.
Yeah.
One is artificial sweeteners. Okay.
Everyone's allergic.
Everyone's allergic. I've only had one person not test positive for that, and I said, well, I can't believe it. And she said, I've never touched them my whole life. I've always.
So artificial sweeteners, what's in artificial sweeteners?
Well, basically years ago when I was just a young man, they wanted to get rid of artificial sweeteners because they knew that they were an outright poison.
Yeah.
And it's a chemical, basically, that the body can't stand. And of course, the diet industry jumped in and said, no, we have to keep these, et cetera. And so they've kept them. But the first arm testing people, or I don't know, reflex, used packets of Sweet and Low as a positive or negative test.
Wow.
And they would pass them out and say, test them for this, now put this in their hand, etc. And everybody in the audience was just amazed. And so it's always been that way. Another is anything that you cook in your microwave oven.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, anything you cook in your microwave oven, it cooks by virtue of fission, right? By bouncing these cells together 50 billion times. And so you get a different product than the body has ever been used to. So it actually fights it. There's a study that happened in Switzerland where they used a bunch of macrobiotics, and every time they tested, they would have one person, a control person, have a meal cooked in a microwave oven, etc. And they test the blood afterwards and find out that sure enough, the white blood cell had gone up and the red blood cell count had gone down, and the body had given force to trying to fight that. So we oftentimes, I send people home with something. I say test A and B in your microwave oven, and sometimes A, B, and C even near your microwave oven, and we can usually tell the difference just through an arm test.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that you do come down to the coast from time to time,
right,
and treat patients, and that our viewers should contact Joel and see what his schedule is like, and perhaps you might have a chance to see Joel the next time he's down here, or if you're in the Okanagan Valley, drop into the Lakelands Clinic, and I'm sure Joel would welcome you there. So, Joel, I mean, it's such a topic. Because of we're very different careers, you and I, but nevertheless, there's quite an overlap here when you think of the electromagnetic component. It's really very interesting. So that's how long the interview is. It's so short. We could have you much longer. So thank you very much for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure.
And maybe you will see you again when you're down here again.
Okay, good.
And that completes our segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome back to Citizens Forum, and this is the Walt and Jack segment of the show, in which we just discuss the local events and things that are happening around the world that's worth commenting on. So welcome, Jack, and what have you brought into us today?
Thanks, Walt. Well, yesterday or today, the name Omar Khadr came back into the news, and there was an editorial in the Times Colonist today. I'll just show that. Great. And I'll just start off with...
What is the title of the article?
It's entitled, "Cash for Khadr is Not Justice." And the first sentence is, so Omar Khadr, the Canadian who confessed to throwing the grenade that killed an American soldier, is to receive $10 million. So that's what they say. He confessed to killing a soldier. First of all, in a war, since when, I mean...
That's the object of the exercise, isn't it?
But Mr. Khadr was tortured by the Americans in Guantanamo prison, where he spent, I think, about 10 years, captured when he was 15. And the Canadian government participated in his torture by refusing to help him.
He was 15 years old.
I think so. Mr. Khadr was then told that the only way he was going to get out of Guantanamo would be if he confessed to everything that the Americans wanted him to confess to. So he signed his name to the confession. And the Times columnist starts its thing with Omar Khadr, the Canadian who confessed to throwing the grenade. I mean, it's just twisted. And I don't want to pick on the Times columnist because all the Canadian corporate-owned media is the same. Maybe not on this issue, but on misinforming us, disinforming us, causing division, not telling us the truth, getting us into the mess, the environmental mess, the social mess, and the economic mess that we're in on behalf of the corporations that own all the big media.
Well, you know, the Khadr story to me and the corporate media, it's just a big fat lie from the start. Everything was manipulated. This guy was tortured. He was technically a child. He was a teenager, 15 years old when this event happened. And this article to me condones torture. Guantanamo Bay, they use torture to extract information from the prisoners. They seem to think that's a fair way to go. It's even when the guy could be innocent. Seems to be no problem with that. I would pick on the TC Times columnist on this one because it's so out of line. It's so illogical that in a civilized society, we hope we live in one, that anyone would write that article. And maybe there's some pressures on these guys that we don't know about, and they have to write this nonsense. But believe me, Jack, it doesn't make any sense because the evidence doesn't support it. And if you got any ounce of compassion in your body, you wouldn't write that article because this guy was a victim of circumstances, no doubt about it. The court ruled he was awarded a settlement, and I wish him the very best.
Yes.
I hope he can overcome what would be a horrific experience, and I hope he can have a happy life and find some happiness in this world. But with an attitude like this, who's safe? I mean, aren't our corporate media, our media, supposed to come and defend our rights and our freedoms? How about erring on the side of defending our rights? Maybe not knowing the whole story, but in this case, it's pretty cut and dried. I think what a lot of people that are in power are worried about is a judgment like this, when somebody actually gets justice. When these organizations, like, well, the U.S. government in this case, and they're imprisoned war prisoners in Guantanamo Bay, this should never exist in this world.
And if we go back to the beginning, and this isn't the beginning, but 9/11,
Yeah.
because prior to 9/11, the lunatics who run the United States commissioned a report, and in the report it said they talked about a war of civilizations, like they wanted to create one because that would give them power. And they talked about a new Pearl Harbor. It couldn't happen without a new Pearl Harbor, and they created the Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Just about 9/11 for a minute. The official story is so full of holes, and yet so much has come from it. And our media and our politicians treat it as if it was true.
Yeah.
1,600 architects and engineers say that it's impossible for the three buildings that fell on that day. It's impossible for them to have fallen based on the fire and the crash of the airplanes. But it doesn't matter. 1,600 architects and engineers, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're still told in 9/11 there was no evidence of an airplane at the Pentagon. I read in Time magazine they said the airplane was atomized, and that's why they couldn't find any. So this is the lunacy that we are told by our media and politicians.
That
And
it's
look
not,
where it's led.
it's not just a nuance in the story. It's not just maybe misinterpreting some facts. This is total invention. And I think what happens to people when they look at these issues and it's so different, the truth is so different than what they're being told, that's terrifying. To me, when you're talking about terror, when our organizations can do this sort of thing and invent these stories. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to bring this up. There was a high rise that burnt in London or in England last week. It didn't fall down, Jack.
And the fire was red hot for
Yeah, so I mean,
Exactly.
you look at that and the suffering and the carnage there is terrible. Uh, but you know, you have to think, wow, why? How come that structure isn't compromised? It's because it's a steel building. It has hundreds of girders. It
and
takes
look
a
at the
lot
death
to
and
make it
destruction
tall.
they've caused.
Yeah.
You know, around I mean around the world, but now they're spreading the terror into Europe and
Yeah.
North America. Well, really, they could be false flag operations. I believe many of them are. Do I have proof? No. But I would like to see an honest investigation of something because they've done it before. They did it through the 1950s, 1960s. I'm talking about the CIA and the military intelligence units in various European countries. They did exactly what they created terror in order to destabilize and maintain power.
Well, you know, there is evidence, powerful evidence, that these organizations are involved in terrorist activities in Europe with Operation Gladio, which is an operation very closely associated with NATO.
Yes.
And you have to really wonder, what the heck is NATO up to? And they were dragged up in court and found guilty of planning terrorist bombings in supermarkets and killing people to create fear. So this is not a conspiracy theory. This
Historical
organization
fact.
has pulled it off.
But the media never tells us anything, and so
Yeah.
we don't know the truth, and so we're easy to manipulate. And that's what they're doing. They're creating the war of civilizations that they seem to want. And behind that, the corporations are destroying everything: the planet, our economy, our society. And until we can get rid of this evil giant
Yeah.
that is destroying everything, and
Well,
I mean,
how can we have democracy when we're living in fear like this? How can we have a chance to turn around this global climate change while we're all distracted about worrying and wondering about where the next terrorist attack is going to occur? I really think there's a plan to keep us in fear, and while we're in fear, we can't act out what our real true rights and freedoms are as citizens. And it's very troubling to see that. I just brought in one other thing myself. This was an old Times columnist article, and it says on their parachuter had long criminal record, and this was about the attacks in Paris about in April or March of this year, and what tweaked me there was how often we'll see an article like that where the so-called terrorists, the people being accused of committing the act, are known to the authorities. And one has to really wonder about that, because in some instances, like in the Boston bombing a few years ago, we had the parents of the guy that was accused of doing the bombing and him and his brother saying, yeah, the SUVs were pulling up here all the time with the black windows and dropping our sons off and all this, and for like a year before this attack occurred. Now, what are they doing? Is it possible they're coaching these guys? Is it possible? Well, you have to wonder. What are they doing with these people if they're so well known and then they can turn around and pull off an attack, or accused of pulling it off?
no, I agree, and it's. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah.
What is being done to us by the people who run the world.
Yeah.
And if we can't stop them, I mean, well, we see where we're going, and it's not
Yeah.
it's not onward and upward.
Now, what about, let's change the topic entirely. Something more fun is, let's talk about the provincial government and the new NDP Green Coalition government. And what do you expect to see in the next few months? Do you think there's a chance that we're going to get into an election like within the next 3 or 4 or 6 months?
Yeah, anything is possible.
Yeah.
In 1991, when the NDP were elected the last time, and they were in power for 10 years, I was jumping up and down with joy because I thought things were going to change for the better.
Yeah.
I'm not jumping up and down with joy now. I really don't have any faith. I'm a member of the NDP, but I don't have any faith
Yeah.
in my party. But I hope I'm wrong. But
Yeah.
from what I've seen, I don't think I am wrong. So I think both parties, both major parties, and in fact, all the major parties in Canada are controlled by corporate Canada.
Yeah.
And they don't work for us. And that's why we need more democracy.
Yeah.
We the people have got to get a handhold on power somehow.
Yeah. You know, we had Rick Hapgood on a couple of weeks ago and talking about going to a referendum to vote on proportional representation. And something occurred to me later was that, you know, referendums are not binding to the government. You can have a referendum and not do a thing. There's no legislation that says you have to do what the answer was in the referendum. My other concern is that there could be some shenanigans that could go on to keep this from happening.
Yeah, I'm worried about that too, because PR voting is important.
Yeah.
It's so important that they really don't want to let us have it.
Yeah.
And so far they've been successful.
See, we could slip into a situation like this. This is my concern. Both NDP and the Liberals, I'm not convinced that they want proportional representation, no matter what they say, and so I think they could get together on this deal. And like the Liberals and the NDP have collaborated before in the past, and they use the same public relations firm, so we know that they know the playbook quite well. My concern is that there'll be some kind of fake kind of thing happening in the next few months. Some party's going to look bad, maybe the Liberals, and the NDP might say, okay, we got an opportunity to go back to the polls and get a majority.
Just like Theresa May. Is that her name?
That scenario.
Yeah, how did that work?
So you can see how precarious
It's very
times we
precarious,
are
yeah.
in. So Jack, this is it. Jack, I have to cut you off, my man. And it's a lot of fun talking to you whenever we can. So that completes the segment of Citizens Forum. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, July the 5th. My name is Jack Etkin. I'd like to just thank our volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this program happen every week, every 2 weeks. Our guest in this segment is Mehdi Najari. Welcome back, Mehdi.
Thank you, Jack.
And so we've almost got a new government, and you want to talk about Site C.
Oh, I think Site C is very important because if this project go through, we are really going to drain all the funding of the province to support this project. The BC Hydro they are saying that the cost is going to be $9 billion. We had the studies done that they say the cost overrun for project like this, 95 in average is 95% cost overrun. So that put the cost of Site C to around $16-17 billion.
And it's borrowed money.
And then it's borrowed money. We have to pay interest rate, and as you can see, the interest rate is going to go up. They are talking about it. So why are we doing this? Do we need this energy? Recently, the government, Christy Clark and her ministers were saying that we need this energy for 450,000 homes in future. At the same time that they were saying this, we are paying the IPP, independent power producer, not to produce energy because we have so much excess of energy. And that fact is being covered up. Here is an article by Judith Lavoie, formerly of Times columnist. Now she worked with DSMOG Canada. DSMOG Canada.
DSMOG.
Yes.
Oh, DSMOG.
And the headline is exclusive. BC Hydro paying millions to independent power producer to not produce power due oversupply. The fact is that we don't need this power.
Can you just mention how much we're on? Because these are all guaranteed contracts.
Yes. They signed for the IPP contractual agreement to buy power from them way over market price. You know, the range of from $50 megawatt hours to $130. And we have this contractual agreement for BC Hydro that put them in debt to a tune of from $58 billion to $76 billion. There are numbers we hear in that range.
Yeah, so BC Hydro, actually Christy Clark and I guess Gordon Campbell before her, signed long-term contractual agreements where we have to pay 58 to 72 billion dollars over the next 40 years.
Over the market price. See, the market price for the same energy is around 5 to 50 to 55, 60. We are paying from 53 to 100 and 130. And this is a huge amount of money going to the Friends of Liberal Party that give them funding the Liberal Party.
And kept very silent by
Kept
the media.
very silent.
Quiet.
But
I mean,
that
we
is
should
a
be
debt.
enraged.
That is a debt.
It is a
That
debt.
those contractual agreement is debt, BC Hydro debt. And if it is BC Hydro debt, is a provincial debt. Is the debt that you and me have to pay for it in future. If we are going to continue with this project like Site C Dam, that is not for our energy needs, then there will be another $25 billion with the interest, if we count the interest, added to that debt. The BC Liberals already raised the provincial debt from $34 billion to $68 billion in last 16 years.
This is not counting the hydro debt.
Not counting the hydro. And then they separate those debts. Before they come to power, we have only one debt. Now they are separating, putting in different accounts. So the total debt is going very high, very high. And that would, in future, if we cannot pay, you know, first of all, it drained the budget of the province. Instead of paying, when you and me pay taxes to pay for the needs, our needs of our society, we cannot pay that. We have to pay for these contractual
Isn't it
agreements.
brilliant how they do this to us?
Yeah, they
And
are
we're-
they are really going after the middle class. You know, they are, so for that reason, we see that in last 16 years, we have lots of service charges, medical charges and other things, you know.
Toll roads in Vancouver.
Toll roads and everything else is because they are putting us into the huge debt. This is one way to privatize. They have done this in other jurisdictions. For example, in Greece and others, the public utility were being privatized in fire sale prices, you know, by putting them in debt. They are putting us.
BC Rail.
BC Rail, the same thing. Few years before BC Rail was privatized, BC Rail was thinking to buy CN. You know, to take over CN because they had such a great situation financially. Few years of BC Liberals, they put them in huge debt, and then they used that debt as an excuse to privatize.
You know, so it's funny that we're always told the liberals, who are of course the corporate capitalists, they are great, business sense, we're making money, they're good for the economy. And that's what we're told. But we see the truth is very, very different.
And nobody talk about the debt.
Even the NDP doesn't talk
the
about
direct
the debt.
debt from 34 billion to 68 billion. How can they be so good if they create so much
It's
debt?
all a story.
Let me read to you what really is behind building of Site C Dam. This is an article from February 13, 2012. Christy Clark talking. The Premier also offered harsh criticism for NDP leader Adrian Dix in relation to LNG and Site C. Quote from Christy Clark. He supports this plan to enable the establishment of an entire new industry in British Columbia called liquefied natural gas. But he doesn't want to do Site C, said Clark. Well, he should be honest with people, because if you do not support Site C, we cannot do the LNG strategy. It cannot happen. So yes, it will require Site C to go ahead. So the whole Site C scheme is for LNG. And what they have done, I highly suggest people go and read articles by Andrew Nikiforuk in Tyee, because he is one of the best journalist in Canada, and we are very lucky to have him. In an article just recently he wrote, he talked about LNG fraud, and the subheadline is this: behind the Trump-like hype, fleece the taxpayer, and a surge of climatic pollution. He wrote, now Clark has offered LNG developers a stunning give it away E-drive rate of 53.6 per megawatt hours. That is less than $30 below the original code and above half of the expected $100 plus of megawatt hour for the $9 billion Site C. So what he's saying is that she had signed some contract with the LNG, wood fiber LNG in Squamish, that to guarantee the price of $53 for megawatt hours of energy that it cost us to produce for more than $100 per megawatt
So
hour.
we're paying,
So
we are paying
we are
$100.
subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. And at the same time, these guys are calling everything we are doing, everything environmentally friendly. So the depth of corruption
Is so huge in
is
this
so
country.
huge. And Mr. Horgan knows all these things. He knows that we can, even if we need energy, we can use the conservation route and create energy much cheaper, much cheaper. Let me read to you from a
And jobs.
and jobs, and also jobs. Yes, it's a energy conservation is one of the cheapest source of electricity available, providing electricity an average of 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, less than half of the 5 cents kilowatt hour price for new resource acquisition. This code is from 1993 and that is given by Senior Vice President of BC Hydro. You know, now
It's
the
terrible.
price is higher, but still, compared to creating energy from electricity and other sources, is much cheaper. And also, we know that it's also provide more jobs. You know, there is much more job created by conservation.
For example, there's so many places in Victoria that still have single pane windows.
Yes.
I mean, we can manufacture them here, install them, save energy. You know, you install them, they're good for a decade each. It's crazy.
I reduced in my own house when I bought it in the year 2000, and today, with all the increases in hydro, I have the same amount in money-wise, total per year, the same amount cost, because I put lots of insulation. I change my electric heating to baseboard so I can heat area-wise, and also I change the windows, and it's much cheaper.
Yes.
So,
yes.
but there is a lot more need to be. I can
Yes.
do solar heat, water
That's
heating,
what we should be doing. you know?
and create much
So
more
we have a new
jobs.
government. Are they going to do it?
I am afraid I cannot trust this Mr. Horgan and his government, because there is nothing in past show that he will do the right things for the public. He is suggesting that he's going to give the whole issue to the BCUC to look at it, and he's going to get a report in 6 weeks and 3 months. But the problem is already more than 2 months has passed after the election. And we know that Miss Clark promised to get this project beyond the point of no return before the election. She couldn't do that, but now we have 2 more months has passed, and still Mr. Horgan has not given this issue to the BCUC because he is not the government yet. He has to first introduce his ministers. And
Well, I don't see how he cannot. People are sure expecting it to be stopped.
Oh, he can create excuses that it came to the point of no return.
But of
and we
course,
have to-
Site C doesn't really matter. What matters is the bankruptcy of BC Hydro.
the bankruptcy of our people.
the province,
Because
yeah.
then they are going to strip the public asset from this province, whatever is public, and give it, sell it in fire sales to the same corporations that caused the problem to begin.
Yeah, it's a mess, and none of it's necessary. I mean, we've got the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada can really solve a lot of our economic problems and give us the money we need to build the prosperous society we all want. You know, we need new tax policies to take from the rich and give to the poor. It's not hard to do.
Why do you create IPPs, independent power producer, give away the rivers of this province to them to devastate, and then buy the energy from them 2 to 2.5 times over the market price?
And all done in kind of secrecy. We never think about it because it's never discussed by our corporate-owned media.
And the surplus energy that BC Hydro has, they sell it in market price, is less than half of what they pay to IPP. It's just crazy.
And Mehdi, we're going to have to end it there. So we look forward to what's going to happen. I really am, in spite of the negatives we're talking about, I'm hopeful. I'm hoping, but we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching Citizens Forum this week.